Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Direct Edition. I'm your host Dave, the guy from the West Coast Davengers. Want to thank everybody for being here. And unfortunately, it's going to be a tough one. It's not going to be an easy subject to talk about. It's not going to be an easy subject to listen to, but I'm glad you're here with me. This week, April 1st, somebody I truly look up to, Ed Piskor, took his own life. For those of you that don't know who Ed is, I'm going to get into it, but in short, he is a comic book creator, blasted onto the scene with Hip Hop Family Tree, which I'm staring at right now on my shelf. Took the Marvel world by storm with X-Men Grand Design. That spurned the other Grand Design projects. And then during COVID, unveiled his horror comic Red Room. And I had first heard about Ed probably before the pandemic. I did not read X-Men Grand Design. I remember seeing it when it came out. But when I worked for the CBLDF, I remember seeing the signed books that we had that were selling at shows. And I looked at the art and, I thought this dude was like a legend, like an older dude that I had, never really heard of because he was in the Silver Age or something like that because of his art style. And, and it's kind of funny when I found out he wasn't. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. But the biggest impact that Ed had on me and on a lot of us, honestly, the biggest thing that he brought into our lives was he was the co-creator, co-host, and co-captain of Cartoonist Kayfabe, which is still the best YouTube channel out there. It's the greatest comic book YouTube channel to ever exist. And that channel is the impetus, to use words that they use on Kayfabe. It is the impetus for West Coast Davengers, for Direct Edition, for me being able to talk to anybody and anybody that's listening and everybody that's listening about comics. And I do not know even half of the shit that those guys put on record, knowledge-wise, but I'm learning every day. I'm going to not get too deep into the controversy that came about, which would be about 2 weeks ago now. Long story short, Ed was publicly put on blast and accused of saying some things in the DMs to a young woman, and he made mistake, and the way that it spiraled over the course of like 8 days culminated with him taking his own life. And I've been dealing with this all week in multiple ways, and I've been dealing with it in some cathartic ways. I had a private stream on my YouTube channel, and I invited as many of Ed's personal friends and the Kayfabers. There's a Patreon, a Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon, and so what it is, we get to watch them every Thursday record the episodes. So Ed would set up a studio for him and Jim to shoot, but he would set up a camera for us to watch. And in that, we got to, we were called King Kayfabers because that's the level on the Patreon that you support. And our chat with the King Kayfabers shared a chat. And it was the fucking coolest thing. It was like this sub-community within this community within the community. So, the community being comics, the Cartoonist Kayfabe community, and then we were the sub-community. And at first you watch Ed and Jim, and, I think they were a little shy at first in sharing this with us, the behind the scenes. But by week 2, week 3, like, they were like, all right, King Kayfabers, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But they would also, just in between shooting videos, glance at the chat. And if anybody had any questions or anything interesting to add, they would address it. And we'd have, this conversation. And I'm very used to that because on my side of things at West Coast Avengers, people are talking to me. And so I have to kind of look at the comments and choose, how am I going to interact with this? And I don't mean because there were negative comments. It's just like if you try and interact with everybody's comments, you really lose track of what you're doing. But Jim and Ed had an awareness about them that I really appreciated. And so inside that community, we got to have friendships formed. And so I ended up hosting a private live stream on this Thursday, which would have been April 4th. And so I invited friends of Ed, colleagues. I invited all the King Kayfabers that I could muster the memory, like names, and be like, okay, I gotta. And so I reached out to everybody and just basically said, look, let's all come in. You can share on screen. You could just sit and listen. You can share in the chat. Like, it doesn't matter. There's no amount of oversharing or not sharing. Just come and see if this helps you heal a little bit. For myself, it was a little tough, but it's my job, right? This is my job, is to, I'm self-imposed community leader of my own community. And the King Kayfabers, I was always just very much enjoying interacting with them. And I didn't want to hijack that stream ever. But as I got more comfortable in there, people would mention, oh, Dave, I enjoyed this episode you just posted this weekend. Or Dave, I really enjoyed the interview you posted, whatever. And it made me more comfortable because I realized, like, the person that, and by default, when I say that Ed is, like, nothing takes away from the person that Jim is. Jim Rugg has been on my channel before. Jim Rugg is a friend, and I love Jim. And Jim will always have my undying respect and love. But in Ed's case, he was somebody that always pushed people to work, to do better, to be very proud of your accomplishments, because he was very proud of his accomplishments. And so in that, like, I never felt bad telling people, like, oh, hey, in the King Kayfabe chat, like, hey, I'm doing an interview with so-and-so this weekend. I hope you guys enjoy it. Because, like, Ed would have, he also seems like a very much stand-up dude that will say what's on his mind. If those guys didn't want me to put that in the chat at any point, like, they would have said something to me, and I would have been like, okay. But anyway, so in that, the King Kayfabers became part of a family. We all became a part of our own community. And so those guys would share the comic books that they were making with us, and so on and so forth. Like Jeremy Heiler just did a Batman comic that he shared, and I bought a couple copies, and Vlad and Gabby. So it became, like I said, a sub-community within a community within a community. And so we did this. I did the stream on Thursday, and it was super cathartic. And then yesterday or the day before, Rob Liefeld, Uncle Rob, released a episode of Robservations all about Ed. And if you watch Kayfabe for more than 2 seconds, you know that Eddie and Jim love Rob, and we're all around the same age, so we all grew up reading all Rob's comics. And if you have a spare hour and 20 minutes, it is heartbreaking, it's beautiful, and it's a must listen to. And Rob really did just such a great job at paying tribute while also addressing the issues around what happened. And I don't even know where to go with this, because I have so many thoughts on all the aspects of this. But most of my thoughts fall to Eddie and his family and his friends and the impact that he had on the community. We lost a leader. We lost a creative fucking genius. We lost somebody who was a megaphone for the love of comics along with Jim. A son was lost, a brother was lost, an uncle was lost, a friend was lost. And I've dealt with this before. If you've ever listened to my It Came From the Newsstand podcast, you've ever heard me talk about mental health and suicide in general. I had a friend take his own life in 2018, and he was a really close friend who was a musician and a voice for, thousands and thousands of people who dealt with any type of depression. He suffered from depression for a long time, whereas I don't know Ed. Ed's, mental. I don't know. You can never know what's going on in somebody's head. Ed seemed like a generally hardworking, positive, upbeat person, but circumstances surrounding this, it just broke him down. I can't even fathom what it's like to have hundreds, if not thousands, of people dragging your name through the mud, judging you before you've gotten to speak, judging you, period, making videos about you, calling you a fucking pedophile because of words that you used? Not actions, words. And mistakes that you made 4 years prior? I have no fucking clue what that's like. I don't ever want to know what that's like. I don't ever wish that on anybody. I don't care who the fuck you are. I don't wish anything like that on anybody, ever. And to watch it happen in real time and feel like I didn't know how to feel, like I wasn't sure. Because the way that we react to seeing people put on blast and canceled like that, like, our emotions aren't even built to understand how to feel that over the course of 24, 48, 36 hours. Like, all I wanted to do was hear from Ed. That's all I wanted. I had some thoughts, I was like, oh man, I don't know how to feel about this, but I never went out there and said anything. People would ask me in live streams over that week, like, what are your, like, what's going on? I'm like, dude, I don't want to talk about this, because I wanted to hear Ed speak on it. I wanted to give the man a chance to talk. And unfortunately, that became his fucking suicide note. And it was too late. And it was too late. I had a decent, friendly relationship with him. DMs, he was one of the first people in the comic book space that I DM'd something to, because I watched the show Cartoonist Kayfabe religiously every morning, coffee and kayfabe. Even when I was in Scotland, I think I did that too. I remember I messaged him something, just, it might have been a question. I'm sure I could go look, but it was a question, or I was showing off a book, and he responded. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then there would be a couple more instances where I'd like tag him in something or whatever, and he would see it and he would heart it, or he would respond. But the first time I ever messaged him where the interactions really started, and I can't remember the book, but it was some underground book. And I was like, dude, have you ever seen this before? Because I buy collections, so I get these books. And I said, hey, you ever see this before? He's like, no, that's sick. I'm like, well, after I'm done reading it, I'll just send it over. And I would send them packages with books, but I would be mindful when I was looking through collections. If it was something I was interested in, like with an artist or a writer that I'd never seen before, there's a good chance that Ed would. And same with Jim. And with Jim, I had a little bit closer of a relationship with, because I had him on the channel. But with Ed, I knew that it took a little bit. I could, kind of tell his personality. Like, he's polite and respectful, but having a conversation with him would take a little time for him to warm up, because I'm such a conversationalist too. And there was a pair of Richard Corbin Swamp Thing books from like 2004. And I had picked them up in a collection. I read them. I enjoyed them. And I hit Eddie and I was like, Ed, did you know that Corbin did Swamp Thing? He's like, what the fuck? No. I'm like, they're in the mail tomorrow. And sure enough, I mailed them, and they made it into an episode literally like 8 days later. And like, look, I'm not gonna lie. I was like absolutely ecstatic that not only did he never know about those, that he was so enthralled with the books that he read them. And I guess he gave them to Jim to read, and then they made an episode. And it was so cool. I was so stoked. And over the course of the last year and change, I would just hit him up and, chat with him. And then when they started the King Kayfaber thing, day one, I was like, yep, here's my $10 a month or whatever it is. I'm like, I would pay more. And listening to them just get really excited about books since I started watching the channel and then the King Kayfabe stream, like, it got me excited. It pushed me to read more. I mean, my shelves were not filled with Dan Clowes books 4 years ago. They weren't filled with artist editions 4 years ago. I'm just looking to see what's on my shelf in front of me. I didn't have the need for the Frank Frazetta books, multiple copies or anything like that. I mean, I'm looking at a compilation of The Actress and the Bishop, which is a Brian Bolland book. And when I went to London last year, I went to Comic-Con and Bolland was going to be there. And so I bought one copy of The Actress and the Bishop to get signed. And then as I was talking to Bolland, I was like, you know what, give me 2 more copies because I'm going to send them to Ed and Jim. And Bolland looked up at me like, who? And I said, oh, Ed Piskor and Jim Rugg, Kayfabe. He's like, oh, I love them, because he had been on the channel with them. And he said, oh, tell them I said hi. And sure enough, I'd messaged Ed and I was like, have you ever read this? He's like, no, is it good? I'm like, I didn't read my copy yet, but I got one for you and Jim and sent it over. And once again, it became an episode and I was super giddy. And, to have your creative, inspirational idols put forth an episode based off a comic that you sent them that you thought they would like, it means a lot. It means the fucking world. And I know so many people that have had the same kind of interactions. And like, think about what that does. Like, just put yourself in the shoes of somebody like that, or put, think about somebody that you look up to, a musician, and you send a musician like a cover that you did of their song and they post it on social media or something. Like, how cool does that feel? Like, we can all lift each other up. It's not that hard. It really isn't. If something that somebody else does inspire you, then shout it from the rooftops. Or if you don't have a platform, just share it with somebody else. When all this stuff came out about Ed, I was just torn, but I immediately started talking to my friends, my fellow, Kayfabe friends, and we're just all hoping, like connectively, like Ed will come out the other side of this. It may take time, whatever it is. There's so many people I talked to that weren't like, well, fuck him. It was more like, damn, this sucks. I'm disappointed, but I'm not throwing away my support for Ed or the channel. And I should have said that to Ed, but you don't fucking know. You just don't. And so on Monday morning, April 1st, Ed had posted a letter on Facebook. And I'm not going to go into the details of that letter. It's too hard. It's still on his Facebook. It's in, you can put it in your Google Docs and read it when you feel you're ready to. But he called out the reasons. And he apologized and he said he made mistakes and he owned up to it. And the first part of that letter, as a lot of people are echoing the same sentiment, would have literally just made this all go away. But it was too late. Because, and I'm sorry if you have experienced in a way that Ed has, being destroyed by people, being called these terrible fucking things that honestly are not applicable, okay? You don't call somebody who grabs a girl's ass a rapist because a person that is actually physically violated violently loses their voice if you do that. Words mean things for reasons. And I'm not here to defend the stupid mistakes that Ed made, because they are just mistakes. They could have been amended. They could have been apologized for. This fucking society we live in just wants to make themselves feel better by tearing somebody else down. And so this letter went from, look, I don't know how anybody else read that letter or what they felt, but I knew what I was reading. And Monday was he posted his phone number in the letter. I texted him, I emailed him, I sent him a message on Instagram. I know friends called him and some couldn't get through, and then I know at least 1 or 2 people that left a message. And like I said, I never met him. I would have this year, but I obviously won't now. I was either going to go to Heroes Con in North Carolina or Japan. And, he introduced me to his friend Sean, Japan Book Hunter, and I've had Sean on the channel. And the last podcast, I dropped a podcast interview with him, and Sean was like, dude, come through. I'll show you, I'll show you my hunt. And I know that, if I was there in November and Ed was there in November, we would have ended up hanging out, just because I would have been like, dude, let's go hunting. Show me your hunt. Because Ed was an ambassador. He was a community ambassador. He was a comics ambassador. He fucking loved comics, and he made it known and he was infectious, and we all love comics more because of him and because of Jim. And Monday the news broke around, I don't know, 2-3 o'clock, and it was just so fucking heartbreaking. And for my part, I am going to share my experiences with everyone here, and it brought back a lot of the trauma going through what I went through, what friends went through together with my friend Scott's suicide, and not knowing, just terrible thoughts about what somebody like that was going through in their last moments. It haunts me, and this will haunt me too. But in that, I will keep creating. I will keep doing what I'm doing, and I want to share a couple of things because my interactions with Ed were not even 99%, 100% positive. He would respond whenever, like I said, I'd show him a book that he never saw, and he would be always thankful if I'm sending it through. I was working a con last year in Tacoma, Grit City Con in November, and I was looking through the table across from me, and he had this like huge box of these Prince Valiant and Dick Tracy, like there were fan-made compilations of these strips from the 30s, the 40s, and so on. And I don't even think I messaged Ed. I think I bought them, and then I hit Ed up. I'm like, dude, have you ever seen these? Because, you know, he was working on his newest piece of work called Switchblade Shorties, which is a cartoon strip, you know, like you would read in the Sunday paper, except it's a lot more PG-13 R-rated. But he was inspired by cartoon strips, and I knew that. I have a good memory for the things that I consume. And so when I hear him talk about something like a year ago, I still remember it. And if you're my friend, you probably know that I have a good memory for the people that I care about. Not that I don't for the people I don't care about, but try to focus on the things that I like. And so I bought them, and I snapped a pic, and I was like, Ed, do you need these? Have you seen these? He's like, I've got the Dick Tracy ones because Fantagraphics collected it. And I'm pretty sure it was Prince Valiant and some of the older cartoon strips, maybe some Milton Caniff stuff. And he's like, but those, I've never seen those. I'm like, dude, they're yours. I'll get them out to you this week. And, you know, it's just like every time he excited me to get excited about comics, and then it was thrown right back at me whenever I showed him something that, you know, either I bought for him or I was like, you know, just excited about. And then he had posted a picture of Baltimore Comic-Con of the original art that he had there. And his cover for the Fantastic Four Grand Design #1, his homage to Dark Knight Returns #2, the Frank Miller where Batman's scrunched up in the cover. He did a variant cover for Tom Scioli's Fantastic Four Grand Design 1. And he showed that he was selling it at Baltimore. And so I sent him a message. I'm like, dude, if it doesn't sell this weekend, let me know. I'm really interested. And he said, no problem. And then we talked like a week later, and he's like, yeah, no, it didn't sell. And I'm going to disclose the price because I just don't care. And so I said, all right, well, how much are you asking? He's like, I had it out for $5,000. I'm like, well, look, I really want to buy it. I can't buy it right now, but let's talk. He's like, well, I'm going to New York, Big Apple Con. So I was going to bring it there. I'm like, all right, let's talk. And anyway, we would talk in the DMs, and he didn't sell it at Big Apple Con, and he was supposed to go to OAX, which is the original art expo in Orlando that happened in January of 2024. Once again, where I would have met him. And it's one of the main reasons I wanted to go in the first place, is because he told me him and Jimmy were going to it. And so, long story short on that, they didn't. He had his deadlines. He wanted to get Switchblade Shorties done. He hit me up after Big Apple Con, I think, when he knew he wasn't going to OAX. And he's like, Dave, do you still want the cover? I was like, yeah. He's like, all right, let's do 5,100 shipped so you can insure it and all that stuff. And I was like, done. I was like, give me a week and you'll get the money. And, you know, I paid him. And, you know, he was so happy that it was going to me, and he was stoked. And, you know, for me, like, sure, yeah, I collect original art. I love it. I know at some point in my life, like, whatever I don't, whenever I move to Scotland, whatever I don't take with me will be sold at auction. But, I don't buy it for investment purposes. I buy it because I love it. And yes, it's fucking awesome to say, like, I own that original cover. Nobody else does. It's mine. And it came directly from supporting one of my favorite creators. And that's really huge to me. Like, I paid Ed direct. There was no middleman. There was no agent. There was no auction house. My money went to Ed. How cool is that? Like, I wasn't going to be poor by buying this. I wasn't going to miss my rent. I knew I could afford it. And so I bought it. And like, it's the greatest feeling in the world is to support artists directly. And it's something I'm very always vocal about. And he sent it to me. I made this great post. Like I knew he was super appreciative of it. And so that was one of the things that I'm just like, I will never get rid of that cover. Because it reminds me of everything Ed Piskor, and the interactions and the show and all this. But for those of you that watch the show, and I mean my show, that I got a big response that sent shockwaves through the comic community when me and Manu put out the whole slab scandal, and then I had Matt Nelson on the channel to interview. And in that interview, I got a lot of criticism, a lot of comments of people saying things like, "Oh, why don't you and Matt Nelson get a room?" Like stuff like that, like shit that just, it's funny on, the back end of it, but at the time, like, it gets into your head and it fucking sucks. And so in that, I got my first taste of what it's like to be fucking, and it was small criticism. Like, the negative remarks were little to the positive remarks, which were huge, but it worms its way in. And there was something at the end of January. I think it was the end of January. So, and the way that Kayfabe structured their shows, Thursday morning, they would do a live stream for public. And it was like kind of just talking about the week and then the week ahead. Then they'd end that, usually be about a half hour or so. They'd end that, and then they'd jump into the Patreon, and we'd start our 5 to 6 hour King Kayfabe stream. And Ed had addressed something that morning about criticism, about like, you just gotta ignore it. You gotta look at it as like, it's a positive thing too, because it means that there's new eyes on your channel and you're doing something and it's pissing some of those new eyes off and it's getting people to say stupid shit. But, I really took that in. I'm like, yeah, I guess he's right, because like that Matt Nelson interview, and then 4 days later, I interviewed fucking Todd McFarlane, put hundreds, if not close to 1,000 new eyes on my channel. 94% of it was positive. 6% of it was fucking just stupid comments and idiots saying shit that they have they can't even grasp, because they're just hiding behind a keyboard and they don't have the fucking guts to do what I was doing with Manu and then myself with Todd McFarlane. And so he had addressed that. And so in the King Kayfabe stream, like kind of when they got it booted up, I said, I rewatched this like a couple days ago because it's a positive memory and I'm able to go back and relive it, so to speak. And so I had said, Ed, thanks for saying what you said about criticism. I've been dealing with some of that recently and it's a little tough. And he said, and here's the quote:
"Dude, that's a good thing, man. Growing pains, my brother. You're bringing more people into the fold, and you ain't getting unanimous praise. So just toughen up. Know that know that you're a good person. Know that you're doing what you think you should be, and fuck everybody, dude."
And it was so meaningful to hear that from somebody who has 90,000 more followers or whatever than I do, or subscribers. And him and Jim chimed in and basically kind of echoed that sentiment. It was just said, it just means you're doing something right to get the haters. And, but it stuck with me. I mean, it's only been a couple months, but it stuck with me. And I wish that he could have remembered that the same insult could be thrown at 5 different people, and 5 different people are going to process that 5 different ways. And if you add that insult to 1,000 pounds of more and more insults, it's just going to make somebody crumble. And Ed was so meticulous in the way that he crafted his comics, his channel, his audience, the things that he said came from a place of sheer joy and the sheer love of comics. And people would turn that around on him. And they would complain and insult. Oh, why does he bash this? Or why is he's critiquing it because he wanted it to be, he wants everybody to get better because he wanted to be better. And he was always upping himself in his craft. He would up the channel. He would up the interviews and the people that they talked to and the things that they did with the professionals that they talked to. If you don't know, him and Jim have set up, I think, have done 8 or 9, something like that, live streams, bringing Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird together. The creators of Turtles, who we thought didn't talk for 25 years, they brought them together on that channel. And it's the best comic book content that has ever been created in this space of social media and YouTube. To listen to Kevin and Peter rekindle their friendship in front of these two. I mean, like, what he and Jim have done for comics and what Ed has done for comics will last for as long as comics last. They will be talking about him, rightfully so. And we owe it to them to honor that and to support Jim and support Tom Scioli and support Brian Moss and these dudes that Ed and Jim brought to the fold for us to get to know. And it's absolutely fucking devastating what happened and how alone he must have felt when he wasn't alone. And like Rob said, Rob Liefeld, we have to do better. We have to be better. It doesn't take anything to be kind to people. All you have to do is just be kind. Or shut the fuck up. Those are the two options. That's it. If I have nothing nice to say, I won't fucking say it. And if I have something nice to say, you're goddamn right I'm going to say it. You don't have to take a compliment, but let me give it. I'm so angry at this whole fucking situation. I didn't lose one of my best friends or anything like that, but I lost somebody that meant so much to me on a daily fucking basis. And inspired me to do what I'm doing right now. This microphone, this computer, I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for Ed. Anyway, I'm going to try to just be better than I was yesterday. I'm going to read as many comics as I can. I'm going to talk about comics as much as I can. I'll always be a proponent for everybody taking care of themselves, doing what they have to feel better for themselves. That does not mean dragging somebody else through the mud. Start your own channel. Make your own comic. Do what it is. I am not an artist. I'm not a writer. I use my stupid voice. Whatever comes out of it is what you hear. This world needs to get better. This is supposed to be a happy place. Comics are not meant to be an unhappy place. And the fucks who turn it into the unhappy place, you'll get what's coming to you one day. Karma does not forget. The universe does not forget. I'm sorry that I said that, but it's true. It's fucking true. And this is just for you, my audience, my people, my friends, my community, the people that love this. Like, pick up a fucking comic. Read something that Ed did. You don't like hip-hop? Fine. Pick up Red Room. You don't like ultraviolence? Fine. Read X-Men Grand Design. Watch the channel. Do that. Pick up one of Jim's comics. Pick up a Brian Moss comic. Support these people. If we don't support them, they're not going to be there for us. And I don't mean that they're supposed to be there for us. But their art won't be there for us. And if you're, by chance, one of those creators who decided to make a video and get clicks off the death and the suicide of a comic book creator, fuck you. Fuck you. Anyway, I'm going to miss Ed Piskor so fucking much. 4.5 years of listening to his voice while drinking coffee along with Jim, hearing him do imitations like, I think it was West Coast Dave. He said, I like hot-shotting. You know, he roasted me once. It was great. I laughed my ass off. The joy I felt when they did the 2 episodes recently, the Comics Journal interview, Hart Fisher interviewing Rob Liefeld. I didn't know that it existed. I found it. I sent him a copy. Him and Jim read it, and they did 2 episodes. And unbeknownst to me, I actually missed the Patreon stream that morning. Not only did he shout out my name, Ed talked about me interviewing Japan Book Hunter and talked about me interviewing Todd and literally lifted me up. And I never asked for it. I didn't think he would go into that kind of depth. And I didn't fucking know he watched my channel. And Jim just nodded and smiled. Jim didn't need to say anything because Jim's been on the channel. And it was like the greatest fucking thing. Like, how hard is it to make somebody else feel better? It's not that hard. If we can all do it. You don't have to demean. You don't have to bully people. You don't have to make takedown videos. Like, this is not the way. Anyway, enough about me or anything I have to say. Ed Piskor, you were a fucking king of comics. You were a community leader. You were a friend to many. You were friendly to more. We're going to fucking miss you. I'm going to miss you. I love you. Jim, I love you too. Everybody out there in this community, I have so much love for everything that you do and everything that you will do. If you need me, you can find the corner of the internet that I occupy, a very small corner. Hit me up if you need to talk. I'm here for you. I may not be the most wise, may not have everything, may not have a single answer, but I'll listen. All right, until next week, this has been Direct Edition. Peace out. And don't forget, read more comics and make more comics. Cartoonist Kayfabe forever.